We want to turn now to that breaking news out of the Middle East. 3 American service members were killed and 25 were injured in a drone attack on a United States outpost in northeast Jordan, near the border with Syria. This marks the first time that U.S. service members have been killed by enemy fire in this region since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. And just moments ago, President Joe Biden put out a statement on this attack, saying in part, "Today, America's heart is heavy." Joining me now is former CIA Director John Brennan. Director Brennan, we're so grateful that you were able to make yourself available on such short notice. I wanted to just ask, you and I have talked a number of times since the start of this war about the risk of escalation. And we've seen that at the border. We've seen it in a number of ways. In the president's statement, he said, "We know this attack was carried out by radical Iran-backed militant groups operating in Syria and Iraq." As you're watching from your vantage point, is this a different kind of escalation, given we're talking about U.S. troops involved?
It's a very dangerous escalation, Jen, given that there were 3 military personnel, Americans, killed and over 24 injured. It's a sizable attack. Whether it was 1 or more drones, these are drones that are packed with explosives and then detonate upon impact. But to have that type of the number of casualties suggests that it was a fairly sizable one. And as the White House has pointed out, Iran has cultivated relationships with a number of the militia and extremist groups in Syria, Iraq, and other areas as a way to put pressure on regional adversaries as well as on the United States. So the big question, I think, for the White House is whether or not this is an Iranian-supported group or whether it was an Iranian-directed attack. But in either way, I think there are going to be consequences.
And on that point, obviously they're discussing that presumably right now in the Situation Room. But in the president's statement, he also said we'll hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing. What are they weighing in a room like that right now? What is the conversation like? As you just said, it's whether it was Iran or directed or whether a proxy. What are the other factors they discuss as they weigh that?
Well, they're going to take a look at the intelligence, what type of intelligence is available, either from human sources or from technical systems, to see which group was involved. Clearly, they were targeting a U.S. base there in the northeastern part of Jordan. The question is whether or not there was some direction that came from Tehran to this group, and also then to determine exactly how best to respond. And I believe that the folks at the White House right now, working with the intelligence and defense communities, are trying to see what type of options they have available. But I do believe that there will be a response here, and Iran is certainly flirting with becoming a target itself of some type of strikes, retaliatory strikes, to deter them from further actions.
Now, we don't know, as you just stated, obviously this just happened, whether this is Iran directed or not. But just to help people understand the context here, if it's Iran directed and that is determined through intelligence, how significant would that be?
Well, I think it'd be very significant. You see throughout the region a number of these Iranian-supported groups, whether it be Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, and now here it appears as though this attack emanated from Syria across the border into Jordan. So it's clear that Iran is orchestrating these attacks, and this directed against U.S. military personnel, resulting in the deaths of U.S. military personnel. It is very, very significant. And so therefore, I do believe that the Biden administration is going to look seriously at some options. And I think Iran is going to have to be held accountable to some degree, whether it is the Iranian support to these groups in the region or whether it is in Iran itself.